So tell me about the quilt that you brought in today.
Okay, well, this quilt was made by my great-grandmother. She's actually my namesake. I was named after her. She was born in 1871 and she died in 1969, and I still remember her as a child. We think this quilt was probably made after she married and before she had 4 children. So it's about 130 years old. And when my grandmother died, my great-grandmother died, my grandmother gave it to me since I was her namesake.
Okay. Well, what do you know about the quilt? Have you done some research yourself?
I have done a little bit of research. I've heard that it's called sunburst. That's all I know, other than just how intricate it is and just the patience that she had to have to make such a fabulous quilt.
Well, this is a lot of work. I mean, this quilt does date to 1890 to 1910, and I love the term sunburst for it because it's descriptive and it works. It's a variant of a quilt type called the New York Beauty quilt.
Okay.
And I think if sunburst is an Arkansas variant or way to say it, they didn't have to say it like they do in New York. That's kind of fun to me. But in any event, one of the features that stands out here are the trapunto technique here, which you just don't see on quilts as often as you would like to because it adds dimension to the visual effect. The colors are great. It's in beautiful condition. I've had a chance to examine it in a way that the audience, can't, but there are a little bit of foxing, a little bit of wear that is a lot less than I normally see. And everyone in the studio has been admiring this quilt all day.
That's right, they have.
It's one of the most popular things here. And, I'm glad to get to talk to you about your quilt.
Well, I love it. And I've talked to my aunts and uncles about it. And they said, we are so glad that you were the one who was given charge of the quilt because you have taken care of it.
Well, it's nice to see beautiful quilts, and they took care to try to hang this as best they could in the studio for us. We'd do a little bit differently if we were working with a professional conservation mounting for a museum or a collector.
Right.
Eventually, that may happen to this one.
Well,
it really
I thought about that. I have thought about, instead of passing it down to my 3 boys, which I would never do, I would put it in a museum to make sure that it was taken care of.
I love to hear it. That fits my sensibilities too. Now, we're here also to talk about the value. Quilt values are hard.
Okay.
Anybody who's tried to figure out what a quilt is worth has hit that. They are made all over the country for long periods of time. Condition matters, and the quality of the provenance documentation matters.
Yes.
We hoped you had a picture of this quilt somewhere in 1910 with your grandma or something like that. So with what we have, these quilts still are very valuable. And the more documentation, of course, the more valuable. A New York Beauty quilt, they do turn up on the market. The color is great, the condition's really nice, and a conservative estimate for your quilt would be $2,000 or $3,000.
Okay.
I easily see it doing more than that. And with documentation, people who collect them as historical documents and, proven evidence of material culture and life would probably get a little carried away, especially if they can't find many more from Arkansas.
Right. Well, I love it. I've had it on a bed for a little bit. I've had it on a quilt rack for a little bit, but mainly I keep it in a pillowcase in the top of my closet.
I was quite amused by you calling around in a pillowcase, and it's part of why it looks so nice. It's not necessarily conservation appropriate.
Right.
You might want to hop online and buy some archival paper and wrap it in that.
All right.
And the nice thing about the pillow, it looked like you look at it now and then, which means you're not leaving it sitting with the same folds.
Exactly.
Because if you leave it, folded in the same way for years or decades, it can cause structural damage to the quilt.
I have heard that.
So pull it out now and then, change how you fold it, and maybe get some archival paper for it or an archival box.
Sounds great. I'm just glad to be able to share it.
Oh, it's beautiful. And thanks for coming and thanks for supporting PBS.
You bet.